Alright guys, I've had a lot of questions about my Teco vise here, my milling machine vise. And when I was purchasing these items, I looked a lot on the web trying to find some info about them and didn't find a lot, so I thought I'd just take a couple minutes and show you what I've learned. I started with a Kurt D675 that I bought used. It's about 15 years old, and after I bought this vise, I swore I'd never own anything but a Kurt vise. I mean, it is the Cadillac, top of the line. It's just about flawless. Excellent vise. However, when I built this CNC machine here, I wanted to have the ability to put two vices on it, like I'm showing it here, for clamping long parts and things. And I didn't choose the Kurt for a couple reasons. One, if I could have bought another one of these, which they don't make the D75 anymore, the D675 anymore. It's now the D688. And I didn't just buy a second one of these because this vise has on the back side, well, hold on a second, let me screw it out. Okay, there we go. On the back of the vise, when you screw it all the way out, yeah, there's I guess the support for the jaw extends past the back of the vise. And in my setup here, because of the proximity of the Z-axis column to the back of the table, that's just not going to work. I would have to give up some wide travel. So that meant that I would have to buy a pair of Kurts, which would be a pair of the 688s, which would be fine, but last time I checked, those were like $575 a piece. So a pair of those was going to be pretty expensive. So I looked around, and there's lots of options, from cheap Chinese import type vices to you have some really nice U.S. made options as well. And I think this is the Teco brand that I got from Teco, and I believe, from what I understand, is they used to be Palmgren, maybe vices, and I think they're Taiwanese made. So I believe it's a step up in quality from the Chinese imports, and they had pretty good reviews, and I think the price on these were about shoot, I have to check it, but maybe $400 or maybe $450, something like that. It's about $150 less than the Kurt for the same equivalent device. And it's a couple differences. I think the jaw opening on this one is about maybe 3/4 of an inch greater than the 688 on the Kurt, which is nice. And they changed the back end of it so it doesn't stick out, which is the same on the new Kurt. So this is pretty much, I think, a knockoff of the Kurt, or very similar to it. One thing that is different is that the Kurt has a cover on the screw. See there? Where the Teco doesn't. I'm not sure if the new Kurt 688 has a cover or not. I know the bigger Kurts do not. So that's not that big a deal. So, long story short was that I could buy two of these Tecos for, $400 probably overall, less than the Kurts, a pair of Kurts. So that's what I did. I bought two of these Tecos for my CNC machine, and I left the Kurt D675 on my manual mill. And so far I'm very pleased with it, and I guess I'll just go through some measurements here and just kind of give you some numbers to work with. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is just check the table here, make sure it's good and flat. Alright, so that's pretty darn good. For a machined table here. So maybe right there is a low spot. 7/10 or so. So maybe, let's call it 5/10 flatness on my table. Okay, here are the two vices I'm checking. Actually, I've got two of these. The Teco, what is that, a 6900? The Teco 6900. And then this Kurt is the D675. So just wanted to check to see how close they are in terms of height. They're supposed to match. Okay, so I got the indicators zeroed on the Teco bed, and we'll tram across. Okay, so the Kurt is about maybe a thousandths off. And I can't tram all the way across it, but let's call it about a little more than one. Alright, so I'm going to repeat the test with the second Teco vise, see how well it matches. So that's pretty good. I'd say that's about as close to zero as I can really measure. So the pair of Teco vices match up really close, and they're both within, say, a thousandths of the Kurt vise that I bought used and is at least 15 years old. So a thousandths difference. And the other thing people asked me about was the jaw on the Teco, whether it lifts or not, so I'll check that. Okay, this is vise number 1 on Teco. Just a 1, 2, 3 block, and I'll move the jaw in and clamp it tight as I can, and zero movement. So I see zero jaw lift on the second Teco. Go back to the first one. Alright, so vise number 1. So I can just barely see a little bit of movement. So unclamped, clamped, maybe a tenth. Okay, so here's the Kurt, unclamped, clamped, and no movement. So 0. Okay, so in conclusion here, the question is which is the better vise? And I think if I am a shop owner and this is my livelihood, then I'm gonna pick the Curt. The Curt is it's a proven piece of equipment. It's just an exceptional machine. This particular vise is 15 years old and it works wonderfully. The only flaw that I've just recently noticed is that the bottom isn't as flat as it used to be. You can see how it's kind of pivoting around, and which tells me that maybe it's a little bit bowed on the bottom now, maybe. I don't see that with the Tecos. This one's bolted down, but when they sit flat, they're flat. So time will tell how it holds up. But honestly, there is nothing wrong with this Curt with the Teco vise. I can find no measurable, inferior feature on that vise. It is absolutely every bit as good in its current condition as the Curt. It has 0 jaw lift when you're tightening parts down. It's perfectly parallel. Its dimensions are just like the inspection certificates say it is. So as far as quality, I have no issue with the Teco at all. The only 2 issues that I did have with it are that, number one, the manuals that came with it, or the lack of manuals. All you get is a photocopy of a exploded parts list that show the mechanism. And it would have been nice to know that, like for example, this nut on the bearing in the front here was so tight that you really couldn't even turn this the screw by hand like this. You had to use the wrench. And by loosening this set screw up and backing this off just a little bit, it freed it right up to where it spins freely. And also how it works the same as the Curt, where you loosen this and can tighten the wedge in there for the lifting mechanism and all, but none of that is explained anywhere, so that's kind of disappointing. And also I do have a few issues with the finish coming off in a couple places, and honestly I'm very careful with my stuff, and I've not dropped anything on here or beat it up in any way, and disappointed to see that finish coming off already. I mean, the Curt's pretty much the same, but it's 15 years old, for goodness sakes. So that's really not that important. It's kind of nitpicky, but no big deal there. So like I said, if I'm making this for my livelihood, I'll probably go the Curt with the D688, because that's probably what I've got everywhere else in the shop. And there's no risk that you're not going to have something that matches one of your other vices. The 2 copies of the Teco that I own are exceptional, and for my uses, which is hobby work and small business, it's an outstanding piece of equipment. For the price, I think I got these on sale at Teco, 20% off, free shipping. It was like $320 or something delivered. So I almost got 2 of these for the normal full price on the D688. So it was kind of a no-brainer, and for the quality you get, it's really good. I'm sure there's a few other vise makers out there, Glassern and a few others that are probably very equivalent to this, and probably still just a step below the Curt, but I'd say it's probably in that same class. It's definitely a step above the Chinese imports that I've seen firsthand. So if you're looking for something better than a cheap Chinese, this is a pretty good option if you don't want to go all out on the Curt. So hope that helps. See you later.